Welcome, friends, to the Rudolph Steiner branch in Chicago. My name is Hazel Archer Ginsburg, and I am so honored to be able to introduce my dear friend, Margot Hodgson, because she is amazing. I remember standing right over here by the library and talking to you about this capstone that you were putting together back early in 2020, I guess it was. And just your process and how deeply you were working with it, and you were even creating like different gestures and things that were so fascinating to me, because it was something that also I was interested in, in my own way. Because I mean, if everybody read the title, it's pretty amazing. Recalling the sound of divine humor laughing after, whilst still, grappling with the beasts. So that's right there. You can know what you're getting into. So yeah, this really began as this capstone, and working with the Anthroposophical Psychology Association was a real journey for you, and you really took it in a deep way and brought all of these elements from your early childhood, these images of yourself in the garden, right, through this idea of what the children that go to the Waldorf school go through, right? They have this experience of the fall, right? We all feel that as human beings. And then you are encountering these beasts of doubt and fear and hatred. And so that if you grapple with that and you do it with humor, then you come into this feeling of your I. And that's the point of being human. And so this is what Margot's going to bring us today. And it has all kinds of amazing images that she worked through with color and these drawings and lots of poetry, so that she could really embody not only her physical self, but your etheric and your astral bodies. So every single layer of life. And life is a journey. So thank you for taking us through this.
Thank you, Hazel.
All right, peace.
All right. Welcome, everybody here and on Zoom. Thank you for joining me today for this presentation of recalling the sound of divine humor laughing after, while still grappling with the beasts. And just a note to those of you on Zoom, I'm not able to see you given the technology set up. But Mihai is here monitoring the Zoom, and he can see you, and he would be happy to take any questions through the chat, and he will read them out during question time. But welcome all. And I'm aware that there are some in attendance who are new or newer to Rudolf Steiner and anthroposophy. And instead of starting with an introduction to his life and work, I would prefer to invite questions at certain points in the presentation, and then again at its conclusion. Mihai, next slide. As I mentioned in the invitation, this presentation has its beginnings as a capstone project for the 3-year training program in Anthroposophic Psychology offered by the Association for Anthroposophic Psychology. For our capstone projects, we were given an opportunity to write a paper on the topic of our choosing, demonstrating our digestion and internalization of the material and experiences over the previous 3 years, and what a 3 years it was. We were then given the opportunity of preparing and delivering a presentation to our faculty and colleagues in 15 minutes on our papers over Zoom. I chose to focus my capstone project on the topic of the 3 beasts of doubt, fear, and hate, as depicted by Rudolf Steiner and introduced to me by our faculty, Drs. James Dyson, Roberta Nelson, and David Tressmer. One way the 3 beasts can be described is as the adversarial forces in our soul functions of thinking, willing, and feeling. where the beast of doubt interferes with our capacity for true knowing. The beast of fear interferes with our capacity for good willing, and the beast of hate interferes with our capacity for love in our feeling life. I've had a long history with these beasts. Before beginning my studies in anthroposophy and anthroposophic psychology, I had been pursuing psychological healing and understanding through many forms of psychotherapy, both as client and practitioner. Since childhood, I had felt a discomfort and dis-ease inside me. I had been searching for relief for decades. And although I had made great strides, the degree of healing and understanding I longed for still eluded me. Discovering Waldorf education, anthroposophy, and anthroposophic psychology has played a large role in providing me the further healing and understanding for which I longed. I remember being asked in a small group discussion what I thought anthroposophic psychology offered that was missing from other psychological systems of thought. For me, part of the answer lies in its description of the three beasts of doubt, fear, and hate, and the personification of these, particularly in the beings of Lucifer for doubt and Ahriman for fear, with their uninvited and intrusive patterns of consciousness. Since childhood, I had been plagued with intense feeling states of doubt, fear, and hate. Consequently, I felt an immediate and deep resonance upon hearing the three beasts named and described, as if my own shadow were being presented to me in such a way that I immediately recognized it as my own. Given that resonance, I knew I wanted to focus my capstone projects on the beasts and my struggles with them, but I didn't know how I was going to structure my paper. As I was struggling to craft my paper, I had an experience with my son that ended up giving my paper its shape. He and I were driving to school one morning from Evanston, where we live, to the Chicago Waldorf School. On our way, we passed a broken bicycle sign, a bicycle route sign, that read Evansville instead of Evanston, as the sign was missing the end of the word. In a sweet sing-song voice of a 9-year-old boy in a happy mood, he asked where Evansville was. I replied in a sweet sing-song voice of a mother of a 9-year-old boy, both of whom were in good humor. Apparently, it's where we live. Laughter spilled out of him, inciting echoes of laughter from me. As we were joined together in laughter, I was blessed with an image of cosmic or divine humor as depicted in Rudolf Steiner's Representative of Humanity, smiling down on us, which elicited more laughter from me. Mihai, can you change the slide? The central image is Rudolf Steiner's sculpture, The Representative of Humanity. And in the upper left corner is an enlargement of cosmic humor, looking down over the scene. My son then asked me if my increase in laughter was a response to the delightfully goofy song he was then singing about Evansville. I replied in the affirmative and added that I was also laughing at laughing. I was also laughing at a thought I had just had about how fun laughing is. I said, I'm also laughing at laughing. This struck him as hilarious, and he laughed harder yet. As we sat enjoying our laughter together, he offered, wouldn't it be great if cars ran on laughter? I agreed, and knowing he has dreams of being an inventor when he grows up, I asked him if he could start working on that. His imagination immediately picked that up, and as he presented me with his ideas, we spent the remainder of that very joyful car ride imagining a world powered by laughter. Later, as I drove home in silence, I imagined I could still hear divine laughter echoing through the car. And at that moment, the title of my paper came to me and the form of my paper began to take shape. Where my paper was written along narrative lines, when it came to creating a presentation, again, I was challenged as to how I was going to present a lifetime's journey of grappling with the beasts in 15 minutes. Again, I was delivered by an experience that gave form to my presentation. This experience occurred at the Christian Community Church on a Thursday morning, 2 weeks before I was due to give my presentation. As I sat alone in the sanctuary after the service, I gazed up at the altar and asked for guidance. Shortly after, a series of images came to mind that became the framework for my presentation. It is this series of images that I would like to present today. Taken together, I hope they describe and depict a journey of recalling the sound of divine humor laughing while still grappling with the beasts. Mihai? 3 times, please. I would like to begin by sharing with you 2 poems that came to me over the course of working on this project. The first one is an expression of gratitude to all of humanity for sharing this journey of evolution. The second is both an introduction to and a summation of the content of this presentation. I will read both of them again at the end as well. The first one is titled In Grateful Acknowledgement and Devotion. Dear sisters in soul and brothers in spirit, I'm sorry I have forgotten who we really are. I'm sorry I cannot as yet see us for who we are. We are divine beings of light. We are all children of God. We are our pure awareness. We are the love in our hearts. We are not the contents of our consciousness. We are not the physical body. We are our rays of light, shining through all the darkness, discernible with true vision, discernible with heart sight. We are fully forgiven for forgetting. Thank you for sharing this journey. Thank you for giving me the chance to remember how to see us all for who we really are. Please grant me your patience as I cut through all distractions of mind to see you in all your glory, not as the contents of consciousness, not as the physical body, but as your divine essence, as the love in your heart. Please grant me your patience as I find my own divine light so that I may truly see yours. Would all be revealed as the love of God if we could but truly see. Mihai. The next one is titled One Cave, 2 Caves. It has 2 parts to it. One cave. I stand in my dark cave of consciousness, surrounded by beings of light. I had completely forgotten they were there. I felt alone and locked in my cave, cut off from the dazzling light of both inner and outer suns. Imprisoned by mirrors of doubt, fear, and hate, I longed to be rescued by brothers. I longed to be rescued from my doubt and my fear, but when the others I turned to couldn't release me, good heavens, I erupted with hate. Little did I know then, the job could not be done from outside. I tried breaking out, but that only strengthened the walls. The only way out was to grow. The gift of love I had in me, my treasure. Then into this space grew the light of a child, a light more radiant than the sun. As they turned on their light, what a mess I did find. I've been cleaning it up ever since. I have cleaned and have cleaned until a small space was made to let in the love of the self. Only that love could dissolve the walls I had built and free the jailers so the jail could be freed. 2 or more caves interweaving. 2 caves of consciousness meet in this realm, drenched in both the light and the dark. With what conduct do we agree to proceed? You show me yours and I'll show you mine. Oh, what a mess we will make. I stand before your cave with great trepidation as I stand in the forecourt of mine. There are places in both that scare me to hate. Those are places I don't want to go. You have feelers in yours that can reach into mine, into those very places I don't want to go. I will blame you for taking me there. I have the same feelers in mind that can reach into yours. Perhaps we should stay far away. But we both have treasures as well hidden inside that could light up the deep, darkest sea. So we could agree to get close, dare to enter the dark, and face the dangers we know to be there. We could search for the suns hidden inside us with the help of the bright outer sun. I would rather do that than stay alone in my cave. Are you willing to go there with me? I would like to continue by describing this journey of remembering in 3 phases, where the first phase relates to being able to hear the sound of divine humor laughing. The second phase relates to becoming deaf to the sound of divine humor while grappling with the beasts of doubt, fear, and hate. And the third phase relates to the process of recalling or hearing the laughter once again. This first image represents for me a state of consciousness in which I can hear the sound of divine laughter. I imagine myself in the center, where I'm held in the loving embrace of the divine masculine, Father, Creator, Will, by whatever name he is called, by the divine feminine, Mother, Mater, Sophia, Wisdom, Holy Spirit, by whatever name she is called, and by the divine child, children, brotherhood, all my relations, higher self, universal I, Christ being, Buddha nature, by whatever name we are called. To me, this brings to mind the image of a happy, loving family, where joy and laughter resound. I hold a memory deep inside me of this state of consciousness, which I associate with my early childhood years. And this memory has propelled my life's journey. The next image on the right depicts the same state more diagrammatically. When I think back to what it felt like in early childhood, I imagine a harmonious flow of energy, which is the dotted lines. The arrows, if you can see them, they go through each lobe in a continuous manner. I imagine a harmonious flow of energy interpenetrating the beings who surrounded me, passing through me at the center as if it were passing through an empty consciousness, where I sit silently, enjoying and partaking of the love, warmth, and good humor that surrounds me. I also remember clearly what felt like an abrupt cessation of that state sometime during pre-adolescence. As I live into the image of early childhood on the left and compare it with my felt sense during pre and early adolescence, it seems as if this harmonious flow of energy stopped. I remember in my thinking, feeling like my brains had been scrambled like eggs with a fork. In my willing, feeling weighted down, paralyzed, and deeply uncomfortable in my body. And in my feeling life, feeling empty, ugly, and angry. It seems as if the boundaries that were once permeable became impenetrable. In place of feeling connection to a source of true knowing, I now experienced doubt. In place of a connection to good willing, I now experienced fear. And in place of a connection to beauty and love in my feeling life, I now experienced anger, rage, and hate. My long journey of grappling with the beasts had begun. As I felt my way into these 2 depictions of consciousness, I experienced a deep resonance with my felt experience during adolescence. And I began to wonder how I might now understand what these impenetrable barriers might be. I wondered if they might be the mirrors of my Luciferic, Ahrimanic, and Seraphic doubles or shadows, which I inherited through karma or destiny, and which block my ability to see beyond this cave of earthly consciousness. Might they also show me reflections of myself that I need to confront, own, and transform before being able to see beyond them into the light of the spiritual world once again? And might they be constructed out of enchanted or enslaved elementals, which need to be acknowledged and released as a part of this process of transformation? And how might they work? Might they reflect back my faulty attempts to reach out to divine thinking, willing, and feeling, such that when I send out false thoughts, impure deeds, and negative or egoistic feelings, these are barred from passing through the barriers? And as these faulty attempts are reflected off the mirrors, might these reflections create my unique and repetitive patterns of thinking, feeling, and willing, depicted by the triangular shapes, which could be called complexes, subpersonalities, or parts of my internal landscape? Might these barriers also block, change, or lower the vibrational frequencies of the divine energies or beings entering this realm, as well as the energies reflecting off them, so that this hall of mirrors becomes a chaotic intermingling of vibrational frequencies? And again, might these mirrors reflect back to me what I need to see and work on in myself to either resolve my past karma or meet my future destiny and continue evolving? If so, how might I come to understand navigating this realm and working to move beyond it? For me, this image has given me a way to conceptualize the value and effectiveness of the many different and sometimes contradictory spiritual and psychological approaches that I have tried and or studied over the course of my journey. If, as depicted here, the straight blue lines that form the triangular shapes, if they represent the rebounding consciousness patterns of the earthly realm, which are reflected off these surfaces, I can understand how practices that seek to interrupt or lessen the strength of these reverberating reflections or triangles could be helpful. Some of these practices might include analyzing and transforming complexes, subpersonalities, and personality parts, separating and strengthening thinking, willing, and feeling, owning and transforming projections and defenses, and surrendering negative thinking, negative feeling, and egoistic desires. So as an exercise, I made a list of the spiritual and psychological practices which I have tried, which might have the effect of transforming these triangular shapes. And if there is time at the end and anyone is interested, I'd be happy to share those musings as well. And if the curved dotted lines in green, yellow, and red, if you can make them out there, represent the patterns of consciousness of higher vibrational frequencies, which are able to pass through these barriers, then I could see how practices that work to align oneself with these higher frequencies while honoring and respecting the lower ones might also help reach beyond this earthly plane. Practices of pursuing paths of truth, goodness, beauty, and loving kindness, of turning thoughts to the divine, cultivating relationships with the divine masculine, divine feminine, and divine child of creation, and inviting in benevolent energies or beings, and of enhancing the etheric energies through certain therapeutic and healing practices. Also, practices which work directly to weaken or create gaps in these surfaces might also help us reach beyond this earthly realm, including practices of working with the elementals or elemental beings, of acknowledging I don't know, I am mistaken, I was wrong, I harbor hate deep in my bones, and I'm sorry. All of which might immediately open gaps in these surfaces. And finally, of using humor. From this perspective, I can then imagine divine laughter being audible when there is a simultaneous breaking through of all three boundaries, expressing elements of truth, goodwill, and loving kindness simultaneously, where we, in effect, reach through the barriers and tickle the gods, and they tickle us back. Divine laughter could then be seen as a release valve for the pressures inside this hall of mirrors. If I think back on the car ride with my son, which I described earlier, I can see how our exchange included these elements of truth, elements of goodwill, and elements of beauty and loving kindness. In that instant, it felt as if we had reached through those barriers and tickled the gods. And I was blessed with a glimpse of their being tickled by us and tickling us back. This presentation was born in those tickles. Since then, I've had further imaginings of divine beings smiling and laughing, and in each case, those three elements have always been present. As I have mentioned in my experience of working to navigate this space, I've employed many techniques to bring some order into this chaotic realm. I now view that work as helping to free up the space in the center to allow the higher self or transpersonal I to enter from the area of divine feeling, beauty, and loving kindness of the divine child of creation. Can you press it twice, slowly? Press it once. Oh, yeah, they're both there. I don't know if you could all see that, but the eye came in.
With an arrow.
With an arrow, yes, pointing the way. So this might be a time to take any questions at this point. Can we go back to the previous one, Mihai?
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you. And that can be from those on Zoom or here. And there will be time for questions at the end too. But if anyone wants some clarification, Elizabeth, could you come up, please?
Margot, I just wonder if you can repeat who's the being sorry.
Is it,
The being that's connected to the hate. I didn't catch that.
okay, well, that's a good question. So as I mentioned earlier, so doubt in Steiner and other people's work, doubt as an adversarial force in our soul function of thinking is related to the being of Lucifer. And fear can be thought of as the adversarial force in our soul function of willing, and that's associated with Ahriman. And hate, the adversarial force in our soul function of feeling, is related to the being of Sora. And I don't go into that too much at this point. I mean, I'll talk about hate a lot, but not much about the.
How do you spell it? I'll look it up.
It's Sorat.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And I was told that the less said about him directly, the better at this point. So I will speak mostly about hate, but that is the being that it is associated with.
Okay.
Other questions? Hazel?
Do you want to talk a little bit about your process of how you overcame? I would love to hear all your.
That will be coming. So
Oh, yeah.
Hazel just asked about talking about the process of overcoming. You mean in terms of the different practices?
Yeah,
Yeah. Do you want me to mention them now?
whatever your thing is.
Let's see. I mean, I'm happy to. It might make sense to do so now. And let me just get my. Okay, so when I thought about, well, actually the images came first. And when I looked at the triangular images, they struck me as what I have studied in terms of Jung's complexes, that they're kind of semi-autonomous centers of the personality that include patterns of thinking, feeling, and willing that all kind of fire together. And they kind of can take over our personality. So if you get stuck anywhere in this triangle, then you're pulled into this complex. And using Jung's terminology or a subpersonality from the practice of psychosynthesis and Roberto Assagioli. And then Richard Schwartz, his practice of internal family systems also deals with parts of personality. So when I thought about the practices that could help loosen those triangles, I thought about the analyzing and transforming of complexes, subpersonalities, and personality parts of the Jungian psychotherapy, the psychosynthesis, internal family systems, and anthroposophic psychology focuses a lot on that as well. And then I also thought that the practices of strengthening and separating thinking, willing, and feeling would also help loosen that triangle, because they act together, that if you loosen them, it would help kind of break apart that triangle. And when I think about practices that help separate or strengthen the individual functions, practices as diverse as Steiner's 6 basic exercises came to mind, as well as cognitive behavioral therapy or dialectical behavioral therapy. It's almost, it's so helpful for me because I can take all these different approaches and find, fit them in this model, which I find very helpful to the way my mind works. So I also thought that, if we're sending out these projections and they're being reflected back, then anything that helps us own and transform projections and defenses would also help loosen those triangles. So anything from psychoanalysis to psychodynamic psychotherapy would also include those practices. And then, if we work on not sending out those false thoughts, false deeds, and false feelings, egoistic feelings, that would also help. And so any of the practices of the 12 steps programs, where you're surrendering thoughts and feelings and motivations for deeds. So any of the 12-step programs would fit into there. Mindfulness meditation would fit in there, and the practice of devotional non-duality of Dr. David Hawkins would also fit in there. He focuses a lot on surrendering. And so then there's also a practice of, can be described as breathing, warming, nourishing, and discerning and secreting the contents of consciousness. So any kind of meditation, and that comes out of Steiner's 7 life processes and the 7 adult learning processes and mindfulness meditation. So all of and I've tried all of them. And then I also did the same with the curved lines. So one way out of that hall of mirrors is to loosen the triangles, and the other is to kind of align oneself with the higher energies that were coming into that space. And so, when I thought about paths of truth, goodness, beauty, and loving kindness, like studying wisdom literature, this is going to sound like a Waldorf curriculum or anthroposophy, or studying wisdom literature, doing good deeds, making art, music, handwork, and poetry, performing eurythmy, studying, learning from, and being out in nature, and caring for others, whether through parenting, profession, or random acts of kindness. So that could, help us jump onto the dotted lines. Also, as I mentioned, like turning thoughts to the divine. So prayer, meditation, silent contemplation, and many other diverse spiritual and religious practices. And then also enhancing our etheric bodies through anthroposophic medicine, biodynamic farming, biogeometry of Dr. Ibrahim Karim, therapeutic eurythmy, as well as other energy healing modalities. And those could help us jump on those dotted lines.
Wow.
Oh, that's an answer to your question.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions? Okay. All right, then can we move ahead? All right, so with after all that, and the I came in from below, with the beginnings of a sense of a connection to the higher self or transpersonal I have an image of how higher or Christ consciousness in some traditions, with its higher vibrational energy, might enter and serve to keep the doubles or forces of doubt, fear, and hate separate and in balance, or bring them together consciously in the central space of the heart. With this in mind, I can also imagine how a development of consciousness might be depicted, showing the successive stages of the evolution of consciousness from birth through adulthood in 7 or 9 stages, as described by Steiner and others, as seen on the next slide. All right, so these 9 images offer a possible depiction of the 7-fold development of individual soul consciousness, as well as the 7-fold development of the earth, which comes from Steiner's teachings. So, and one thing I wanted to say in the beginning is that, if something doesn't resonate, just, take what you like and leave the rest, because there's a lot here. So the image in the upper left might depict the consciousness of early childhood, ages 0 to 7, and of the old Saturn phase of the Earth's evolution, where human consciousness extends into the farthest reaches of the spiritual realms. The next image, in this upper center, would depict the consciousness of middle childhood, ages 7 to 14, and the old sun phase of the Earth's evolution, where this line between the red area and the green area would indicate the first barrier to the farthest reaches of the spiritual realms, or the results of the first sacred wound, as alluded to in creation and other myths from various traditions. The next image would depict the consciousness of adolescence, ages 14 to 21, or the old moon phase of the earth, where the next line would depict the second iteration of the sacred wound and an additional barrier to the highest realms. The 3 images in the center row would depict the consciousness of early adulthood, ages 21 to 42, or the current earth phase of Earth's evolution, where human consciousness is fully separated from the spiritual realms, and where the birth of the higher self can occur in freedom. The next image would depict the consciousness of ages 42 to 49, or the future future Venus. Phase of the Earth's evolution, where the higher self is reworking the astral body, shown in green. Then the consciousness of ages 49 to 56, or the future Jupiter phase of Earth's evolution, where the higher self is reworking the etheric body, shown in yellow. And finally, the consciousness of ages 56 to 63, or the future Vulcan phase of the Earth's evolution, where the higher self is reworking the physical body, shown in red. And as I imagine myself in the center, where the birth of the higher self, or I being, can occur in freedom, I can feel a connection through time to the previous and future stages of the evolution of human consciousness and those of our Mother Earth. Any questions? William,
The sacred wound.
you want me to speak about the sacred
Well,
wound?
what is it?
Okay.
Is that the fall of
Well, yes, it's the first fall,
the first fall?
where Steiner describes it in the inner experiences of evolution, where it happens on old Saturn, and it's at that point where time is created and eternity comes into existence. And I could tell you the story that he shares, where he talks about the hierarchies of the thrones who are offering a sacrifice to the cherubim. And their sacrifice is their whole being, their whole will. They're sacrificing to the cherubim who are receiving it. And this is in eternity. And then for time to begin, the cherubim had to renounce some of that sacrifice and not receive it. So they turned their backs, so to speak, and no longer received the sacrifices of the thrones. And that those sacrifices were bounced back. And I'm not going to be able to recreate it exactly, but somehow in that bouncing back, some smoke was created, and that allowed the opportunity for the first kind of, as it was described to me, the first kind of Luciferic beings were able to enter at that point. And the first feelings of rejection and separation and egohood happened at that moment, if that makes sense. And then that was reiterated on Old Sun and Old Moon and Earth to create the different phases. And then it's also described differently in other traditions. So that's just the one I'm most familiar with.
Okay, that's good.
Any other questions?
I have a couple of questions. One, I was,
Mary, do you want Paulette to come up?
Well, it would be nice if everyone would walk up, but it's okay, go ahead, go up to the front and ask. That's nice.
Thank you.
yeah, thank you. I'm assuming that's a typo on the bottom middle. It says
Probably.
ages 0 to 7. I'm thinking that should be 56 to.
Yes.
No problem there, but I'm also assuming that, you could probably talk all day about just this diagram.
Yes. And I would love to hear other people talk all day about this diagram too, like teachers, and people, biographical work. Yeah.
But I'm wondering if you could just say a little more about the diagram part, the tripartite form and how that changes with each of the phases.
So, the Trinity form was that initial, so the way the presentation evolved was that image of the divine masculine, divine feminine, and divine child came to me during COVID as like a comfort. And then as I sat with that image, the implications of it just kind of unfolded. So, first I focused in on the earthly consciousness of early adulthood, and then I realized that it could be expanded to have these different levels of evolution where 0 to 7 there hasn't been a sacred wound, and that looks, the first image looks a lot like my original image. And so that to me reminds me of early childhood, where we're just spiritually connected. And then I thought of the sacred wound would kind of bring in that first barrier to the farthest reaches. So now we're still spiritually connected, but we can't get out, we can't go back to the garden, but we're not totally cut off yet. And then it also just dovetailed with the descriptions of the evolution of Earth and in Saturn. So then it helped me also realize that, in early childhood, they're still in kind of a Saturn consciousness. And then in 7 to 14, that we're still in this next phase in the green, yellow consciousness. And then finally, when we get to young adulthood, we're fully cut off. But we have to be fully cut off for the I to be born. We have to go through that darkness to have that opportunity to birth the I, and then And then, as you know, I've read going forward, then we rework the astral, the etheric, and the physical, and that kind of just dovetailed nicely with those last images.
So
Okay, go
That's a
ahead.
lot, thank you, yes. So the connections with old Saturn, old Sun, old Moon, that's something that you came to, or is that something that you found in Rudolf Stein?
You mean the connection of 0 to 7 to old Saturn?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a combination. I think it was definitely came out of Steiner, but I think it was also kind of the digestion and internalization, and then it came out in a new form.
Yeah,
If that makes sense.
absolutely.
Okay.
I would love to talk with you more.
Okay,
about this.
okay. Sounds good. I would love that too. Any other questions? Okay. All right, next slide then, please. So this next slide shows the same 7 stages of evolution of human consciousness. And in this image, I can discern a breathing process. An in-breath from the spiritually connected realms of early childhood in the upper left, into the realm of earthly or young adult consciousness, where the birth of the higher self or I can occur in freedom, and an out-breath or return into the spiritually connected realms of maturity or old age, if our karma or God's grace allows. Also revealed here is the central organizing principle of this presentation, the higher I. This slide then shows the 7 evolutionary stages of consciousness together in one diagram, with the higher self or I being represented in the center, the heart center. With the birth of the higher self or I being, the return journey to the realm of spirit is underway. This slide might also indicate a depiction of the 9-foldness of the divine hierarchies, with the first hierarchy referred to by Steiner and others as the seraphim, cherubim, and thrones depicted in red. The second hierarchy of Kyriates, Dynamis, and Exousiae depicted in yellow, and the third hierarchy of archai, archangels, and angels depicted in green. Again, as I imagine myself in the center, within the 10th hierarchy of human consciousness depicted in blue, I can imagine myself connected and in communication with the other 9 hierarchies that surround me.
And you have those in your book there.
Yes, yes. The original artwork is on the back table, should anyone be interested. And I also brought some of my work from the 3-year training program, which is in this binder up on the front, if anyone wants to look at that at the conclusion. Finally, while continuing to meditate on the original diagram of the divine family or Trinity, it occurred to me that if I repeated that image 4 times for the 4 cherubim, the 4 directions, the 4 temperaments, and the 4-fold nature of the human being, it would depict the 12-foldness of the beings of the zodiac. Again, putting my or human consciousness in the center, I envision and experience connectedness through space to the 12 beings of the cosmos and their 12 perspectives. Which brings me full circle back to the original images. For me, the journey into Waldorf education and the study of anthroposophy and anthroposophic psychology has played a significant role in helping me reconnect to and remember my home in the center, lovingly embraced by the divine feminine or mother, the divine masculine or father, and their divine child of creation, where I can hear once again the sound of divine humor laughing after, or more accurately, while still grappling with the beasts. There's more. It might seem, oh, thank you, but okay. Since first giving this presentation a year ago, I've continued to grapple with the beasts, which is why the title includes the parenthetical "while still." In fact, for the written portion of my capstone, I had the audacity to initially entitle it Recalling the Sound of Divine Humor Laughing After Grappling with the Beasts. I have learned, though, that a sure way to invite the beasts for a grapple is to use the word after in a presentation about grappling with them. It was as if they responded to my initial paper and title with an, "Oh yeah, huh? So you think you're done grappling with us?" Last summer, I was challenged with doubt, fear, and hate to a degree I had not yet known. It took me to the mat. And many here, both in flesh and in spirit, have helped me through that toughest of struggles. What I have learned from it, though, has been invaluable. I'm continuing to come to an understanding of the value and, in fact, the gifts of doubt, fear, and hate, of their proper place in my psyche and how to put them to appropriate use. In order to elaborate on these musings, I want to take us back to a previous image, the one that depicts the reworking of the astral, etheric, and physical bodies. In the reworking of the astral body, in green, once we have given birth to our higher I, with that I consciousness, we can become aware of our tendency to experience animal fear in our willing, and use that awareness to help us develop and call upon courage in the face of fear. In the reworking of the etheric body, we can become aware of our capacity for doubt in our thinking, and use that awareness to help us develop independence of thought, discernment of consciousness, and faith in something greater than our earthly thinking. And in the reworking of the physical body, we can become aware of our capacity to experience hate in the center of our bones, in our feeling life, and use that awareness to help us develop love for all humanity and the entire cosmos. So now, in my better moments, when I experience doubt in my thinking, I can rejoice and see in it an opportunity to further develop independence of thought, discernment of consciousness, and faith in the divine family, by whatever names they are called. When I experience fear in my willing, I can acknowledge it and also see in it an opportunity to call upon courage to help me consciously face what I would otherwise unconsciously respond to with a fight, flight, or freeze reaction. I can then make a calm and detached choice about what might be a good enough way to proceed. And when I experience hate, that most uncomfortable of feeling states, I can now also rejoice and imagine it dwelling in the deepest part of my bones and in the core of my metabolic digestive system. And I can further imagine putting it to work there, destroying, transforming, and spiritualizing matter, infusing my feeling rhythmic life with the released love of the spirit, and then directing that love into the social and cosmic realms. Through this process, I am learning to move from grappling with the beast to developing a deep appreciation, gratitude, and respect for them. This seems to be finally allowing me to experience the degree of relief and healing for which I have been longing. In closing, I would like to express my deepest gratitude for all the true thoughts, good deeds, and feelings of love and beauty made available through Waldorf education, Anthroposophia, the Association of Anthroposophic Psychology, as well as all the other approaches and practices I've pursued along the way. To all of you here and beyond and on Zoom, for embodying the above qualities, and for all the assistance and guidance I have received as I have been pursuing this journey of recalling the sound of divine humor laughing after, while still grappling with the beasts. And in conclusion, I'll conclude with the two poems that I started with. In grateful acknowledgement and devotion. dear sisters in soul and brothers in spirit. I'm sorry I have forgotten who we really are. I'm sorry I cannot as yet see us for who we are. We are divine beings of light. We are all children of God. We are our pure awareness. We are the love in our hearts. We are not the contents of our consciousness. We are not the physical body. We are our rays of light, shining through all the darkness, discernible with true vision, discernible with heart sight. We are fully forgiven for forgetting. Thank you for sharing this journey. Thank you for giving me the chance to remember how to see us all for who we really are. Please grant me your patience as I cut through all distractions of mind to see you in all your glory, not as the contents of consciousness, not as the physical body, but as your divine essence, as the love in your heart. Please grant me your patience as I find my own divine light so that I may truly see yours. Would all be revealed as the love of God if we could but truly see. And then one cave, two caves. One cave. I stand in my dark cave of consciousness, surrounded by beings of light. I had completely forgotten they were there. I felt alone and locked in my cave, cut off from the dazzling light of both inner and outer suns. Imprisoned by mirrors of doubt, fear, and hate, I longed to be rescued by brothers. I longed to be rescued from my doubt and my fear, but when the others I turned to couldn't release me, good heavens, I erupted with hate. Little did I know then, the job could not be done from outside. I tried breaking out, but that only strengthened the walls. The only way out was to grow, the gift of love I had in me, my treasure. And into this space grew the light of a child, a light more radiant than the sun. As they turned on their light, what a mess I did find. I've been cleaning it up ever since. I have cleaned and have cleaned until a small space was made to let in the love of the self. Only that love could dissolve the walls I had built and free the jailers so the jailed could be freed. Two or more caves interweaving. Two caves of consciousness meet in this realm, drenched in both the light and the dark. With what conduct do we agree to proceed? You show me yours and I'll show you mine. Oh, what a mess we will make. I stand before your cave with great trepidation as I stand in the forecourt of mine. There are places in both that scare me to hate. Those are places I don't want to go. You have feelers in yours that can reach into mine, into those very places I don't want to go. I will blame you for taking me there. I have the same feelers in mine that can reach into yours. Perhaps we should stay far away. But we both have treasures as well hidden inside that could light up the deep, darkest sea. So we could agree to get close, dare to enter the dark and face the dangers we know to be there. We could search for the suns hidden inside us with the help of the bright outer sun. I would rather do that than stay alone in my cave. Are you willing to go there with me? Yay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions?
Did Wilson do that one?
No. That's still me.
Channeling your inner child.
What's that?
Channeling your inner child.
Yes. Yes.
We do have some questions from online.
Okay.
Okay, so I wonder if we should just, if we can turn this off, I can bring your computer and you can maybe read it.
Okay.
I think that'd be better.
Okay.
Let me just. You may want to read it out for also.
Okay, my question. I really enjoyed how you brought in the other approaches you've worked with, like Jung analysis, IFS, internal family systems, and other. Was that part of the 3-year Anthroposophic Psychology program, or did you bring that in from your own personal history? I appreciate so much you sharing yourself through this beautiful presentation. Thank you very much. So in the Anthroposophic Psychology program, and that was from Sylvia, if it's okay for me to share, we did definitely bring in discussions about many other forms of psychotherapy, not particularly in this manner. So this definitely came from more of my own experience, personally and professionally. Here's another from Leon: a psychologist thanks you, with more to say than possible in this way. Thank you. I think that's it online. Any other questions?
Tell us where you work.
Oh, well, I have been working at the Jung Center in Evanston. I've been there since 2014. And I'm currently on leave, and wondering what to do next. After finishing this training, I'm kind of interested in bringing in other approaches. I mean, and to bring in working with energy and working with the etheric, and to do that more directly. So I'm kind of thinking about other trainings and what's next. Carolyn?
Do you work with individual people?
Yes, I have been primarily an individual counselor. Personally, I've spent a lot of time in group therapy at another phase in my life, and I am a big proponent of group psychotherapy. It's kind of a more accurate representation of that cave of consciousness, because you have so many energies interacting and reflecting and bombarding, and you can get a more accurate kind of view of how you interact out in the world, because there are all these triggers right there for you. So I found it very helpful in my journey. Oh, another, okay, thank you, Margot, for sharing your process of insights to the healing path and transformation. Can I just read these out? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is such a beautiful example of how when we do our work and heal ourselves, it is an offering to humanity. Your poems and artwork are deeply touching. Will you make your slides available to us? I would love to work with them more for my personal and professional practice and transformation development. Thank you. Thank you. Let me think about that. I hadn't thought about that. So, I mean, this is being recorded. We have to view it first.
It will be launched on the Rudolph Steiner branch website
Okay.
at a certain point.
Okay. And we can send that out after we see how it comes out technically. And so let me think about, I mean, there will definitely be more sharing of this material in some form or another. Well, people can, and can we send people my email so they can follow up with me? Okay.
Sure.
Okay. All right, I think, and then there are some thank yous, but I don't see any more questions per
Why don't
se.
you put your email in the chat?
Oh, thank you. Okay, here is my email in the chat.
I just want to frame the art and put it in my house.
I know.
Yeah,
Frame the artwork.
yeah, it's beautiful.
Thank you.
Dr. Rentina, could you just give one example of, I'm sure you have hundreds of, one etheric strengthening that you feel was really valuable, or I mean, the whole lecture, of course, was that, but is there one thing that you can say when these beasts try to eat you up? Is there one etheric thing that you know,
That comes
that
to
could
mind.
protect you, that just comes to mind?
I mean, one thing doesn't. I mean, I guess eurythmy is the first thing that comes to mind. But I think I've found that I need a multimodal approach. So, I mean, I've started using essential oils, smelling essential oils. And I've also been starting to read about this practice called biogeometry, and I bring up those two things at the same time because I think they're related. Like, so biogeometry talks about how shapes can affect our energy. And so it works on the etheric through shapes, and the essential oils work on our etheric through smell. But I've been reading that you can strengthen it through all of the different senses. So shapes, smells, movement. And I think for myself, I've needed all of them. Music. I mean, the whole Waldorf curriculum, I think, I mean, and the reading, for me, the wisdom literature is huge. Actually, I would put that top of the list. Because that, I mean, in prayer and meditation, like I don't think I could, any of those I would put at the top of the list.
There's an individual I don't think they can maybe type, but I could ask them to unmute. Leon?
What's that?
I could ask someone online to unmute. I think they want to answer a question as well.
Sure.
If they can't type, let me see.
Oh, sure. Okay, can I, and then there's one I can read in the meantime?
Sure.
Okay, this is from Robin. Hi, Margot. At the Christian community in Johannesburg, we are looking at the Jungian archetypes this morning. We were looking at the Jungian archetypes this morning as part of a workshop on biography through story. This has been a valuable companion to the earlier part of the day. Thank you from South Africa.
Wow.
Awesome. Yay.
That. Let's see if I got it. So are you checking that out?
Yeah.
Ask them to speak. I don't know if they can hear.
Did you ask Leon to unmute?
Oh, you want me to do that?
Ask him to unmute.
I did him. Can you hear me?
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
So can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yeah.
Okay, I've been looking forward to your talk for a long time, and I really wanted to be there in person, but life conspired to keep me at home this morning. Now, as I say, I'm a psychologist. I've done many years of graduate doctoral study and work with severely emotionally disturbed children. And I'm really intrigued by these pictures of the threefold explanation of everything. Now, I'm also very clear in my mind, not just my mind, but in my whole experience, that we have a psychology. We are not our psychology. Our I owns our psychology, and as we talk about our soul. So we're actually speaking of our higher self owning our soul and then taking ownership, responsibility for it in these psychological ways. And we're also in the danger here of getting trapped in the idea of process and getting better. And we have to be careful about that, because the whole business of initiation of enlightenment is not a process so much as an instantaneous realization. It happens outside of time. And for me, I experienced this in a very different way through what's now called the Landmark Forum. Now, in this work, you're in a workshop situation, and I went on Tuesday to such one, which was the first in-person one in several years now. And I just knew one person there who was the course leader. I'd worked with her before in other places. And as I was walking through the space, I heard this woman said, Leon. And I thought, nobody here knows me. She must have read my name tag. And I turned around and there was this lovely face laughing at me. And I said, you sounded like you knew me. And you know what her answer was? I do. And we had this moment of knowing each other profoundly, apart from our psychology, our personality, et cetera, et cetera. Also wanted to share about Jung. I grew up in working class England. My father was the first on the street to get a TV. And looking back, I realized there were two things on TV in black and white that really affected me as a teenager. One was this famous interview with Carl Jung. It's online now. And he's asked in the interview, do you believe in God? Are you familiar with this? He says, I don't need to believe, I know. And I thought, as a child, I want that. And that's why I'm involved in anthroposophy. The other thing was the liberation of Belsen. And the pictures from that just really affected me for the rest of my life. And the two go together in a way. I guess that's all I want to share right now. I just wanted to introduce myself as someone also intrigued with all these approaches to self-development and self-mastery and transformation above the mind. Because most of my life I've been in my mind. I'm very intellectual, and I think of jokes that relate to your issues like doubt, for example. I have Neptune on my ascendant. That creates a great deal of confusion until it's transformed, and I'm still working on that. And then the rising sign is Libra, which is also balancing things out. So the relationship to doubt is that I used to be indecisive, but now I'm not so sure.
Well, thank you. Thank you for, I appreciate your comment about the caution of getting too involved with process, and that enlightenment happens outside of process. And that's very helpful for me to remember. I think, a part of the presentation, I think I've also been in my mind for much of my life trying to figure things out. And I think, part of the process and part of what this allows me to do is to I think of it as an organizing principle. Like I feel like now if someone asked me, do I believe in God? I would also say, I don't have to believe. There's been something through this process and also outside of the process, because I think those two things can happen together. You can be in process and something can happen totally outside of the process. But having this helps me come out of my mind, because I can put that aside, like that's done. And I can live more in the body and in the etheric, and but I have the need to organize. And so this is like, I finally cleaned up my basement and it's here on the wall. And now I can Yeah, live outdoors.
Just wanna say-
Yeah.
I just want to say not to negate self-development and self-improvement and everything, but not to confuse it with actual initiation.
Mhm.
The two go together, like you say.
Yeah, respect. Any other questions?
Where did you learn all the, like, old sun, Saturn?
Studying Steiner, I mean, and through the Anthroposophic Psychology.
So I've never heard that before. Like Vulcan, I'm a Vulcan, evidently.
Yeah.
So I'm just like thinking of Star Trek, you know?
Well, I think, yeah, and that's, I mean, eventually our development might follow those. I mean, I just came out of the cave of consciousness, you know, that I just turned 49, no, 42, but I'm not 42.
Yeah, right.
So we're a little behind. We're a little delayed, if all of us. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Jim.
You speak of church and God, like almost beyond faith at this point. You know, you comparison of knowledge as opposed to faith in terms of God. I'm just wondering where you speak of demons, are you speaking of symbolic, metaphoric, or actual demons?
So the question was, when I speak of demons or beasts, am I speaking metaphorically or symbolically, or I'm actually, or literally? Can I answer both? I mean, how I've come to make sense of it in my own mind and through reading is that, you know, it's my belief, this is all that everything has an energy to it. Everything has a vibrational, like I'm giving off an energy, everything gives off an energy, and they vary across a wide spectrum. And, you know, we have access to a very small portion of that huge spectrum. And my sense is that those energy waves, those frequencies have different qualities to them. Some are very beneficial and life-giving and enhancing, and some are not. Some are really destructive and dark and carry elements of very unhelpful energies. And so those energies, I think, have certain characteristics and qualities and can be kind of grouped together. So if I think of like Luciferic energy, that it has a quality that we can give a name to, and that's been named Luciferic or doubt, or various traditions name them different things. But so it's literal. I mean, there is this group of energy vibrations that carry those characteristics, and we can label it. And it has a little bestiality to it and demonicness to it. So I think both. And yeah, and then there are these other energy patterns that bring love and joy and health, and we can name those too. And you know, we all carry all of those frequencies in us, and I think what I'm describing is kind of how to work with those energies, both the working with those.
So it's the naming of the thing rather than describing the essence of, like, you use the word like Satan, you're not like a separate individual consciousness in the universe.
Say that again.
Well,
Like,
you're using concepts like Satan, you're not talking about this individual persona or an elaboration of ideas.
I mean,
Because I mean, Christ has kind of become that in a way. I mean, there was theoretically this person named Christ, but associated with Christ are all these ideas of love and compassion,
right.
So
And
you
Christ
conceptualize
consciousness
Christ
has
from
become.
the person or the elaboration of ideas.
I know.
How I was wondering about the evil kind of evil that would
I mean, I think it can be both and, like, I don't think that needs to be answered, or it's above my pay grade, like, I mean, to me, yeah, to me, it's both, it's, I mean, it has a personality, and then I think if I think about what's helpful, like, for me personally, it's helpful to think of it as both an energy and something that I can label and has a bit of personality of its own. I mean, just like our own complexes have a personality of them. I mean, and I could label my complexes, or I can think of them as patterns of energy. And I think both are valuable.
Usually we don't call those energies calm. You kind of do when you call it.
What's that?
Usually we don't call those energies like calm.
A name.
A name, you don't
Versus
respond to them, but
Maybe we
Well,
should.
I mean, those are that's what archetypes are. I mean, those, and the archetypes have been given names, and that's helpful.
so you're thinking of Satan as an archetype rather than a persona. That was basically my reading.
Yeah, both.
Both,
I mean,
okay.
yeah. I mean, I guess to me, it doesn't matter. I guess I don't know. I think I go back and forth, and sometimes it's helpful to name it, yeah, and sometimes it's not. How's that for Denise?
It was interesting that when you were saying just now, you had mentioned earlier, one influence of the non-duality. I'm sorry, I
Oh,
didn't catch
yeah.
the name, and then to me, it's really interesting that you were using largely a triad structure there, but then when you were speaking just now, the light and dark got really polar. Like light was the good thing,
Oh.
dark was the bad thing, and I mean, that may have been an oversimplification from your short comment, but I just wondered where the duality sat against the threeness.
Okay, that's a good question. So if I think of the threeness, I think of the duality as the upper two lobes, and the third one, whether it's love energy or Christ consciousness or higher self, whatever we name it, is what helps to bridge the dualities. So there's the thesis, the antithesis, and whatever. Someone else can help fill that in. I forget. Synthesis, thank you. Jung talks about the transcendent function. I mean, so there's always this duality, not always, but when there is a duality, there's always this opportunity for synthesis to bring them together. And I don't know who talks about the coding with just that we have to move away from this binary. Like the binary is really problematic because it misses that third element.
And it puts darkness, I mean, Earth is dark, growing is coming from darkness. I mean, I just think that a two binary idea
Right.
of light and dark is actually inaccurate and not helpful.
Yeah, I mean, so that's such a good point. When I think about a spectrum of energy, I do think about lower to higher, which puts it on a continuum. And I do have a tendency to think the lower ones are like less life-giving, but there's a place for that, right? But I mean, my mind, like I'd so much rather live over here. But I think part of what I was saying at the end is that there is a place for those, but how do we use them? Like, how do we take that darkness and use it to metabolize what we've eaten, or to, like, I love the idea of spiritualizing matter. Like, how do we do it in a way that we use that darkness consciously and use it, like use fear as an opportunity to step into courage, and use doubt as an opportunity to develop independence of thought, and use hate to break things down that need to get broken down. Like, I think of hate as this destructive force, and there needs to be destruction, but let's use it wisely and consciously. And my hate just used to just come out with no consciousness and destroy things like relationships that I didn't want to destroy. So like, if I can keep it in my metabolism and I can keep it in the center of my bones where it lives like with love and can spiritualize the blood or whatever, that's where it's meant to be. I don't know. Thank you. Okay.
Yay, really great, awesome.
Thank you. Oh, let's see, did I miss anything?
Refreshments in the back?
Oh.
Invite everyone on Zoom to.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that there would be refreshments in the back. And then there's some doodlings if anyone wants to join. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Margot.
Thank you, Mary.
Mary and Mihai.
Thank you, Mihai.